And the worst part? You've already felt this. You just didn't know what it was. Something is happening in America. And it's not just inflation, your rent, your hospital bills, your groceries. They didn't just go up randomly. They were pushed up by a system most people have never heard of. And by the end of this video, you're going to see it everywhere. Think about the last time you stood at a register, watching that total climb, just the basics. And something in your gut said, this isn't normal anymore. You're right, it's not. Everyone told you it was inflation, supply chains, COVID, the war overseas. And sure, those things happened. But here's the thing nobody says out loud. Inflation is supposed to be temporary. Prices go up, then they settle. That's how it works. But these prices, they're not settling. They keep going up. And the real reason? It has nothing to do with supply chains. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because the answer involves money, enormous amounts of it, and people with enormous amounts of power, and a window of time, about 14 years, where the rules basically stopped applying to them. Go back to 2008, banks collapsing, families losing everything. The Federal Reserve dropped interest rates to almost zero. The economy recovered. But those rates, they stayed for 14 years. And this is where everything changed. Because when you can borrow billions at almost no cost, you don't refinance your house. You buy entire industries. And that is exactly what happened. Private equity. Let's keep this simple. They raise money from big investors, pension funds, billionaires, university endowments. Then they borrow even more, and they go buy things. But here's the catch. They don't buy businesses to build them. They buy them to extract from them, load the company with debt, pull out cash as fast as possible, collect fees the whole time, whether the business survives or not, whether you get hurt or not. That part doesn't matter to the model. Now here's the part that should make you angry. For decades, they stuck to struggling companies, turnarounds, bankruptcies, risky bets. That was their lane. But then came 14 years of free money, and their lane disappeared. They started buying things people can't live without. Hospitals, apartments, nursing homes, vet clinics, emergency rooms, even the parking lots outside those hospitals. And every single time, prices went up. Every single time. Let's talk about rent, because this hits hardest. In 2011, institutional investors owned almost zero single-family homes in America. That market belonged to regular people, first-time buyers, young couples, families trying to build something. Then 2008 crashed housing prices, 30–40% in some cities, and the feeding frenzy began. Blackstone created Invitation Homes, and they bought 80,000 houses. Phoenix, Atlanta, Tampa, Charlotte, 80,000 families shot at ownership, now paying rent to a Wall Street algorithm. But it gets worse, way worse. There's a software company called RealPage, and what their product allegedly did, when you hear it, sounds almost surreal. It let landlords across the country share pricing data and coordinate rent increases, not independently, together, through an algorithm. The Department of Justice launched an antitrust investigation because what this software allegedly did is called price fixing. In plain English, landlords using a machine to make sure nobody charges you less. So you think you're shopping around. You think you have options, but the prices are all mysteriously similar, because they basically are. Think about that next time your renewal shows a 15% increase, and you told yourself, I'll just find somewhere cheaper. Now let's talk about your body, because this part genuinely disturbs me. Private equity has been quietly swallowing American healthcare for 15 years, not just hospitals, urgent care clinics, cancer centers, fertility clinics, hospice care, the places you go when you're most scared, when you have zero leverage, when you will pay anything. Those places, now owned by firms with quarterly return targets. Here's a specific example. You go to the ER, you're in pain. You're not comparison shopping. The hospital takes your insurance. Great, but the doctor who walks in, they work for a private equity-backed staffing company, completely out of network. 3 weeks later, a bill arrives. Not a copay, thousands of dollars. This was called surprise billing, and before Congress limited it in 2022, these firms were pulling in billions per year from it. Billions. From people's worst days. And those same companies spent millions lobbying against the law trying to stop them. That's not a theory. That's documented. You did everything right, worked hard, got insurance, played by the rules, and in your most vulnerable moment, the system still found a way to bill you for it. And somehow, you still lost, and even your pets aren't safe. Vet bills doubled. Same care, different owner. The clinic your vet works at? There's a good chance it's owned by a private equity firm now. To them, your dog isn't a patient. It's revenue. Now let's zoom out, because I know what you're thinking. Isn't competition supposed to fix this? If one company charges too much, another comes in cheaper. That's the whole point of a free market. And you're right, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. But here's the problem. When private equity buys all 3 hospitals in your region, when it owns 40% of rentals in your zip code, when every vet clinic nearby runs the same pricing software, where are you going? There's a term for this, a captive market, which is just a fancy way of saying you're stuck. The illusion of choice, with none of the protection. And here's the part nobody talks about. A massive chunk of the money funding these buyouts comes from pension funds, teachers' pensions, firefighters' pensions, state workers' retirement accounts. So in this deeply twisted loop, the retirement savings of working Americans are being used to buy up the housing and healthcare those same Americans depend on every day and charge them more for it. The person funding the buyout and the person getting squeezed. Sometimes it's the same person, just separated by 15 layers of complexity, designed to make sure they never figure that out. So what do you actually do with this? Buying in bulk doesn't fix this. Coupons don't fix this. You cannot individually budget your way out of a structurally broken system. What changes this is antitrust enforcement with real teeth. Regulators who block acquisitions before entire sectors get consolidated. Local laws capping corporate homeownership. And most of all, people understanding the specific mechanism. Not corporations bad. The exact chain, the exact names, the exact decisions. Because you can't vote against something you don't know exists. You can't demand a fix for something you've been told is just inflation. Everything that feels random about prices right now, it's not random. The apartment you can't afford, the ER bill you're still paying off, the vet invoice that made your stomach drop, these aren't market accidents, they are outcomes. Deliberate outcomes, built by very smart people, with very expensive lawyers, and more political influence than most of us want to think about. The money didn't disappear, it moved. And now you know exactly where it went. The firms that spent 15 years buying housing and healthcare, they're now moving into water utilities, internet infrastructure, AI systems that will price your insurance, approve your mortgage, and set your rent. Software that runs schools, hospitals, and local governments. When there's no limit set in advance, there is no limit. And right now, there aren't enough limits. So the next time you're standing at that register, watching the total climb higher than it should, remember, somewhere, someone is watching that same number, and they're not wincing. They're planning the next acquisition. And if you think this stops here, it doesn't. It scales. And by the time most people notice, it's already too late.